Welcome to the new iWorld studio. This is our premiere day. I'm very excited. I'm especially excited that I have Kevin Miller here today. Kevin, one of the, I'm an old guy. By the way, that's your cue to say, no, you can't be that old. But no, it's true. It's true.
You're not as old as me.
I predate peristaltic phaco. And for me, it was really a revelation to be able to separate aspiration and vacuum when peristaltic phaco came out. You're going to separate more stuff for us today. We're going to be talking about active fluidics. And let's start out with this idea. I was under the impression, and I know that you're going to set me straight, that if I have my irrigation bottle 2 meters high, that I am going to get a water column that's 2 meters high. That's going to be the IOP. But you tell me that that's only true if there's no flow?
That's correct. So we, in the phaco world, measure IOP not in millimeters of mercury traditionally, but we measure it in centimeters of water. Like, what does that mean? What is a 50 centimeter water eye pressure? How does that correlate to anything that I live with in my clinic? Like, I know that the average IOP is 16 and a half. What's the equivalent in centimeters of water? We don't live in that world.
You don't divide by 13 in your head? It doesn't come up there?
So if you want to convert, you actually have to take the IOP in centimeters of water, multiply it by 0.74, and you get the IOP in millimeters of mercury. But it only works at zero flow. So you have the bottle, you have the irrigation line, and you have the eyeball. As long as there's no leakage from the eye and there's no aspiration flow out of the eye, only under that one circumstance does the bottle height equal the eye pressure. Under any flow conditions, it completely changes.
So so spell this out. I can understand why it would be that if I'm running aspiration, that I'm obviously that I would think that I would be lowering eye pressure. Again, this is in the absence of active fluidics, which we're going to get to. But you tell me that even if there is an aspiration, just by virtue of fluid running through the tube, I'm going to lower IOP in the eye. Why is that?
That's true. So have you ever noticed when you're doing phaco, you go in, and as soon as you step on foot position 1, which everybody calls irrigation, I prefer to call it pressurization because unless you're running fluid through the eye, you're actually not irrigating the eye. So you go in, you put it position 1, no leakage, the pump hasn't turned on, you pressurize the eye. And what happens? The eye goes whoop like that. You see the iris go down, the chamber widens. And then if you do nothing other than go to position 2 and you begin to draw fluid out of the eye, what happens to the iris and what happens to the chamber volume? It starts to collapse, things start to come up. Why is that? Because you're changing the IOP. You're changing the actual pressure inside the eye by the mere fact that you're pulling fluid out of the eye. Pulling fluid out of the eye then causes a stream of fluid to come into the eye from the bottle through the tubing into the eye. And when that fluid runs through that irrigation line, it loses pressure. It's in the electrical world, if you have a battery and you have a resistor and you run current through the resistor, you drop voltage across the resistor. In the fluidics world, when you run fluid through a resistive tubing, you drop pressure across that. And that's the key behind active fluidics. Active fluidics overcomes that problem.
So how does the magic happen?
Right. So in the active fluidics world, you sense the actual pressure of the eye or something close to the eye, and you say, oh, wait a minute, the pressure is dropping. We need to do something to fix that. So what do? You cycle it back to the bag, the thing that's holding the BSS, and you squeeze it, and you create more pressure at the head to overcome the losses going through the resistive tubing. So if you can do that very dynamically, sense the pressure very quickly, at a very high rate, and you can servo it back to the motors that are squeezing the bag, you can then dynamically vary bag pressure to maintain constant IOP pressure regardless of how fast fluid's running through the eye.
And that's
huge.
not done, yeah, well, of course, that's not done through pogoing the bottle up and down, right?
Correct. You could not do that fast enough or dynamically enough, and it's not done by pumping air into the bottle, which also would not be fast enough. Air is very compliant, and you have wide pressure fluctuations. You're pumping air in, but if you can squeeze the bag, BSS is basically not compliant. So you can get very responsive times on that.
So how should this now? I can understand that it need not affect my technique and just feel more confident doing what it is that I like to do, but how does it affect my settings?
Yeah, well, it affects them in a major way. So some surgeons like to be, they're very snappy. They want to get through the case quickly, right? So what do you do to increase your throughput? Generally, you run your aspiration flow rates up pretty high. So once you get occlusion, boom, you quickly get vacuum limit. You take the pieces out. You go and get occlusion again, run the vacuum up, boom, and you take them out. So you're running high flows, right? High flows are going to really drop the IOP. They can a 60 cc per minute flow rate will drop the IOP 50 millimeters of mercury.
Really?
That's a lot. So if you're running a bottle height of, say, 70 centimeters of water, and you run a flow rate of 60 cc's per minute, you'll collapse the eye. So it's a safety issue as well as just a comfort for the patient. When the eye is going like this, as the pressure is fluctuating up and down, under topical anesthesia is really uncomfortable. If you can maintain a steady IOP, much more comfortable for the patient. You can work at a much lower bottle height, which again is more comfortable for the patient. So I used to work at bottle heights of 70, 80, 90 centimeters of water. Now I set my IOP to 35, 40, which is still, think about it, it's twice physiologic. Before it was 5 or 6, 7 times physiologic. Now at twice physiologic, patient's more comfortable, pressure's not going up and down the eye, so more comfortable experience, safer. It's just better. I mean, it's just all around better.
Yeah, really, really interesting stuff. And interesting how again, there are parameters that we can sort of separate here. The separation in this case being the IOP and the flow, which we can independently control because of the sensing and this feedback and all of this stuff. This is very, very interesting. I will have to give it some thought before
Next trip
next
into the
week's
operating room.
cases. Yeah, no, this is wonderful. I want to thank you for making this really very complicated topic very, very clear, and for being so very generous with your time. And I want to thank you for watching our iWorld live program in our brand new studio. Thank you for being part of the audience.
Yeah, this whole thing is great. Love it.